The alien Admiral Xareth arrived at the human colony under a cloud of uncertainty. The humans were a relatively new species in galactic affairs, and their presence had raised many questions across the stars. The Admiral had been summoned here to witness their growth up close and make a judgment on their potential as allies or adversaries. The first impression of the colony was striking. It was small yet bustling, full of energy and vibrant life, strange to Xareth, who was accustomed to the silent efficiency of their own people. The humans were loud, they were filled with life. Even in their daily routines, it was as though everything was new to them, as if they were discovering the universe for the first time. Xareth had seen countless worlds and civilizations, but none like this. Their joy was unsettling and infectious, in a way Xareth could not explain. After a series of brief formalities, the Admiral found themselves wandering through the colony. As the meeting was delayed, Xareth had been told that the children of the colony often played on advanced holographic devices, while their parents attended to their duties. So with nothing else to do, Xareth found themselves drifting into a room filled with children. The atmosphere inside was chaotic, but in a strange way it seemed peaceful. The children were gathered around various holographic projections, laughing, shouting, and pretending to be anything from pirates to astronauts. Xareth's attention was quickly drawn to one child in particular, Aiden. Aiden was standing in front of a large holoprojector with a small but complex-looking interface, a starship simulator. The Admiral watched quietly as the child's hands flew over the controls, effortlessly moving the virtual ship through a dense asteroid field. Xareth had seen such simulations before on other planets used by soldiers or officers to hone their skills, but this was different. There was something in the way Aiden's fingers danced over the interface, as though they had been doing this for years. The child's movements were precise and deliberate. Each turn and maneuver seemed like it had been rehearsed time and time again. At first, Xareth assumed the child was simply playing a game to pass the time. But as the simulation continued, the Admiral's perception began to shift. The starship dodged incoming fire from enemy ships, weaving between deadly obstacles in ways that were far beyond the capabilities of most children, even young officers. Xareth's eyes narrowed as the child navigated a particularly challenging section of the simulation. The ship was outnumbered and surrounded by enemy craft. Most would panic or try to fight their way out, but Aiden did something else. They launched a series of decoys, creating a perfect distraction that allowed the ship to slip away unnoticed. Xareth was no stranger to strategy and tactics. They had fought in countless battles across the stars and had seen the tactics of numerous species, but this child was doing something extraordinary. Xareth had been trained to notice every subtle shift in the battlefield, and yet here was a child making moves that even the Admiral had not seen in years of combat. There was no doubt now this was not just a game, this was something else. The Admiral stood there for a long time, watching as the child moved from one challenge to the next. Aiden was not just playing, they were thinking deeply with every decision, every move. Xareth began to question whether they were witnessing the future of humanity in the making, and if this child was any indication, humanity would soon become something more than just a fledgling species. They were becoming something formidable. Xareth remained silent, watching as Aiden's small starship glided effortlessly through an asteroid field. The Admiral's gaze shifted to the surrounding children, who were lost in their own worlds, shouting commands and pretending to battle imaginary foes. But Aiden was different. The intensity in the child's focus was unmatched, and Xareth felt a strange, growing unease. The child's starship continued to dodge asteroids, weave between massive space debris, and outmaneuver enemy vessels with a grace that didn't seem possible for someone so young. Every move was deliberate, precise, like the actions of a seasoned fleet commander. It wasn't just the gameplay. It was the way Aiden processed the challenges. Xareth had seen countless simulations over the years, watched young soldiers hone their skills in battle simulations, but none had exhibited this kind of advanced thinking. Most players would panic when surrounded, relying on brute force or desperate maneuvers to escape. But Aiden's response was calculated and calm. The ship circled a massive asteroid, using its gravitational pull to sling around the edge, before swooping toward an enemy ship, blasting it with pinpoint accuracy. A perfect shot. Xareth could not shake the growing suspicion that this was not a simple game of play. The child was executing strategies, the kinds of strategies one would expect from commanders who had seen real combat, not a young child who had only recently learned to speak in full sentences. The child's fingers moved in a fluid dance, eyes never leaving the simulation as the ship encountered larger threats. A fleet of enemy ships appeared on the holographic horizon. Xareth leaned closer, barely breathing, as Aiden seemed to study the virtual enemy, calculating every possible scenario in a way that suggested a remarkable understanding of tactics. The child did not rush into action. Instead, Aiden carefully adjusted the starship's course, flanking the enemy from an unexpected angle, utilizing the surroundings to its advantage. It was a textbook tactic, surprisingly sophisticated for someone so young. As the simulation continued, Xareth's mind raced, piecing together the growing pattern. This child wasn't just playing to pass time. This child was practicing, preparing. Whether consciously or unconsciously, Aiden was learning how to lead, how to command. And though Xareth tried to dismiss the thought, it was becoming clearer with each passing moment. This wasn't just a game, this was training. Xareth glanced around the room. None of the other children seemed to notice the significance of their actions. They were enjoying their game, but for Aiden, it appeared to be something more, something deeper. Xareth took a step back, trying to digest what they were witnessing. Humanity's rise through the stars had been fast and chaotic. Just a few centuries ago, humans had barely scraped the surface of space exploration, but now their ships were beginning to patrol the galaxy. They had fought well in battles, but never had Xareth considered them a serious threat to galactic powers. They were adaptable, yes, but they lacked the deep knowledge of warfare possessed by older species, or so Xareth had thought. But this child, this one small human, was showing a depth of tactical understanding that could rival any seasoned officer. And it wasn't just natural talent, it was something more. It was as though the child had been groomed for this, trained to think ahead, to anticipate the next move in ways that were almost instinctive. The unease in Xareth's mind grew. If this child represented the future of humanity, then humanity was evolving far faster than the Admiral had ever imagined. And if every human child was like this, capable of this level of strategic brilliance, then perhaps Xareth had greatly underestimated the potential of the human race. The thought made the Admiral pause. Humanity wasn't just surviving. They were learning. And they were learning quickly. Xareth continued to watch Aiden, now feeling a sense of awe creeping into their thoughts. The child's hands moved with a confidence that only experience could produce. Yet the Admiral knew that Aiden was no seasoned officer, no battle-hardened commander. This was a child, no older than 7 or 8, executing tactics that many adults could only dream of. Xareth couldn't help but wonder what made this human so different from the others. What was it that allowed Aiden to think and act with such clarity, such precision? Unable to hold back their curiosity any longer, Xareth approached the child, who was now focused on the next stage of the simulation. The ship was being pursued by a much larger enemy fleet, and Aiden was navigating through a narrow asteroid belt to escape. Xareth stood behind the child, watching intently as the ship wove through the dangerous maze, narrowly avoiding massive rock formations. "Why do you play this game, Aiden?" Xareth asked in a calm voice, their tone neutral but carrying an edge of genuine curiosity. Aiden didn't flinch, nor did the child pause in their task. Instead, Aiden smiled without looking back. "It's not just a game," the child said, as if the answer were obvious. "I want to be a captain, a starship captain. I've been playing this for years, ever since I could reach the controls." Xareth was taken aback by the child's response. "A starship captain," the Admiral repeated, now watching as Aiden's ship slid into a gap between 2 asteroids, avoiding another barrage of enemy fire. Aiden nodded enthusiastically. "Yeah, I want to fly the big ships, like my dad. He's a captain. I want to be like him. I want to protect people, and lead ships, and explore new places. Sareth considered the answer, their thoughts racing. The child's words were simple, but there was an underlying seriousness in the tone that sent a chill down the Admiral's spine. This wasn't just idle play. This wasn't just a dream. Aiden truly believed that one day they would command a fleet, lead a crew, and navigate the stars in the same way Aiden's father did. There was something deeply unsettling about how matter-of-fact Aiden was about it, as if becoming a captain was simply an inevitable step in the child's future. It was an ambition rooted not just in a child's fantasy, but in something much more focused and determined. Zareth's mind began to process the implications. Was this what humans were doing with their young? Grooming them to become commanders, to take the lead in space exploration and conflict. Aiden seemed to sense Zareth's growing unease. "Do you want to try?" Aiden asked, offering the Admiral the controls. "It's fun. You can be the captain too." Zareth hesitated, their gaze lingering on the holographic controls. The idea of engaging with such a complex system seemed almost trivial, but there was something about the child's invitation that felt like a test. Zareth had commanded massive fleets before, had directed entire armadas to victory, but this was different. This was a glimpse into the future, a future where the children of humanity might rise to command ships with the same ease Aiden displayed now. Zareth took a step back. "Not now, child," they said, their voice steady but now filled with an uncertainty they hadn't expected. Aiden, seemingly satisfied with the Admiral's answer, went back to the controls, their focus never wavering. But Zareth couldn't shake the feeling that the child had shown them something far more dangerous than any battle or starship. It was the potential of a species capable of building an entire generation of leaders. And the Admiral was beginning to understand that humanity was far more than just a fleeting presence in the galaxy. They were the future. As Aiden continued to maneuver through the virtual battlefield, Zareth could not pull their eyes away. The simulation had escalated, the stakes higher now as a full enemy fleet appeared on the horizon. It was no longer just a single ship dodging asteroids. It was an entire armada, closing in with relentless precision. Zareth had seen simulations like this before, used by military tacticians to test their skills. But there was something about Aiden's movements that felt different. It wasn't just the child's ability to command the ship, it was the child's understanding of the flow of battle, of when to strike and when to retreat. Zareth could feel the weight of the decisions in each movement, the careful calculation of every action, and it struck the Admiral with a new uncomfortable thought. Aiden was thinking like a commander. The child's starship was surrounded on all sides. A smaller fleet of enemy vessels had closed in, creating a tight net of laser fire. Most people would have panicked, firing back blindly in the hopes of survival. But Aiden didn't react with fear. Instead, the child's fingers danced across the interface, issuing commands in rapid succession. Zareth watched in stunned silence as Aiden ordered the ship to feign damage, releasing a false distress signal, and began a complex retreat maneuver, an intentional retreat to draw the enemy in closer. Aiden's ship weaved through the enemy fleet, using the incoming fire to its advantage, creating space between them and the enemy as they navigated closer to an asteroid field. The Admiral had witnessed this kind of maneuver many times before, only never from someone so young. Aiden was setting a trap. The child was playing the enemy like an experienced fleet commander. They were using decoys, timing, and positioning, all to make the enemy come closer, unaware of the ambush they were about to fall into. The simulation came to its climax. The enemy fleet, drawn in by the feigned distress signals, closed in. Just as the pursuers were about to tighten their grip, Aiden issued a new set of commands. The ship veered hard to the left, entering the asteroid field with impeccable timing. The enemy fleet followed, their ships becoming tangled in the debris, unable to track the elusive target. Aiden's ship, meanwhile, dove in and out of the asteroids with practiced precision, coming around from behind to pick off the now trapped enemy ships one by one. The victory was complete, But the child's expression didn't change. Aiden didn't cheer, didn't gloat. They simply reset the simulation and started over, ready for the next challenge. Xareth felt a chill run down their spine. This wasn't just playing. Aiden had just executed an ambush, a trap that could easily be replicated in real combat. It was no longer a game. It was a lesson in military tactics. The child had understood how to manipulate the battlefield, how to create advantages and control the tempo of the fight. Xareth thought back to their own fleet and the kind of decisions they had made in the heat of battle. Those same decisions were being made by a child who had never seen war. And that thought was unsettling. The Admiral turned to leave, but not before taking one last look at Aiden. The child was already preparing for the next battle, completely immersed in the simulation as though it were second nature. What kind of future was humanity preparing for? Xareth wondered. The realization settled heavily on Xareth's mind. If this child was any indication, humanity wasn't just playing a game. They were preparing to be a serious force in the galaxy, one that could not be underestimated. It was only a matter of time before the lessons learned here would be applied to the real battles of the stars. Xareth couldn't shake the image of Aiden's focused expression from their mind. The child's movements, the precise execution of every tactical decision, were far beyond what Xareth would have expected from any species, let alone one that was just beginning to spread its wings in the galaxy. The Admiral left the room, a strange weight on their shoulders. They wandered through the bustling corridors of the human colony, their thoughts racing. Humans were known for their unpredictable nature, their adaptability, their drive to conquer the unknown. But they had never been seen as natural strategists, not in the way older galactic civilizations were. Yet here was proof of something entirely different. Xareth had to know more. The Admiral returned to the observation room the next day, their curiosity growing by the hour. They weren't sure why they had come back, perhaps to confirm their suspicions, or maybe to see if the child's brilliance was an anomaly, a random fluke. But as they approached the doorway, they could already hear the sounds of the simulation inside. This time, Aiden was not alone. The room was filled with a group of older children, all gathered around various holoprojectors, their faces lit by the flickering light of the virtual universe. Xareth stood at the doorway, their eyes scanning the room. Aiden was in the center, but this time the child wasn't just playing alone. Aiden was instructing. The older children listened intently, watching as Aiden pointed to the holo interface and outlined strategies for them. Xareth's breath caught as they realized that Aiden wasn't merely playing. The child was teaching, guiding others through complex battle scenarios. The young ones, no older than 12, were watching with rapt attention, absorbing every word, every gesture from Aiden, as if it were gospel. It was clear that Aiden had become the leader of the group. "Okay, guys," Aiden said, their voice calm but commanding. "If we want to survive this, we need to split into two groups. One of us will take the high ground, and the other will lay a false trail. We'll trap them between us, just like we practiced." The older children nodded, pulling up their own controls and adjusting the simulations to follow Aiden's lead. Xareth watched as the entire room shifted into a coordinated effort, each child performing their role with practiced precision. It wasn't just mimicry. They weren't following Aiden out of simple admiration. They were absorbing and applying the same strategies Aiden had displayed yesterday. Xareth felt an uncomfortable realization settling in. This wasn't just a game of strategy or a battle simulation. This was training. Training designed to build future leaders, future commanders. The humans weren't just playing for fun. They were learning. They were teaching one another, and they were growing more formidable by the day. "All right, team," Aiden said, finishing their strategy session and looking directly at the others. "Let's go. On my signal. 3, 2, 1. Move." The group sprung into action, coordinating the simulated assault with a precision that stunned Xareth. The enemy ships, caught off guard, were quickly overwhelmed, and the battle was won. Aiden didn't even smile in victory. The child simply reset the simulation, ready to move on to the next one. The Admiral stepped back, stunned into silence. These children were not just learning. They were growing into something much more dangerous than Xareth had ever anticipated. This kind of leadership, this ability to teach and inspire others, was the hallmark of a species that could one day lead entire fleets, entire civilizations. Humanity wasn't just preparing for the future, it was already there. Xareth's mind raced. The question now was no longer whether humanity could be a threat. It was how quickly they would become one. And if they were already this capable at such a young age, what would they be capable of in just a few years? Xareth stood in the doorway, their mind racing as they processed the scene unfolding before them. The children, led by Aiden, had just completed yet another flawless mission in their virtual simulation. The Admiral had seen entire fleets of trained soldiers falter in less complex situations. But these children, these humans, were performing with the precision and discipline of seasoned veterans. It was nothing short of extraordinary. As Aiden and the others reset the simulation and prepared to dive into the next one, Xareth felt an unfamiliar unease. The Admiral had always prided themselves on their ability to read situations, to understand the potential of other species. But nothing had prepared them for this. Humanity was different, far more capable than Xareth had ever imagined. Xareth turned away from the group, retreating into a quiet corner of the colony. Their thoughts were a whirlwind. The idea that a species, a mere child no less, could exhibit this level of tactical brilliance was unprecedented. What did it mean for the future of the galaxy? Were humans simply gifted in this regard, or was there something else at play? The Admiral's mind circled back to a conversation they had had with the human ambassador just a few weeks prior. It had seemed like standard protocol, a formal exchange about the colony's goals, trade agreements, and alliances. But now, in light of what Xareth had just witnessed, those words seemed different, almost prophetic. They are a unique species, the ambassador had said with a knowing smile. Their capacity for growth, for adaptation, is beyond anything we've encountered. If you give them time, they will surprise you. Xareth had thought it was just a boast, a diplomatic flourish. Now, they weren't so sure. Back in the simulation room, Aiden had shifted the focus of the next session. No longer was it simply about strategy. It was about leadership, about controlling the ebb and flow of battle, about making quick decisions under pressure. The children were learning not just how to command, but how to inspire, to think beyond themselves, and act as a cohesive unit. "Okay," Aiden said, standing at the center of the group once again. "We're going to face something new. This time, we're not going to just fight back. We're going to lead the fleet into a diversion, then we're going to retreat. But we do it together. No one gets left behind." "Understood." The others nodded eagerly, their eyes locked on Aiden. Xareth couldn't help but notice the respect in their gazes. Aiden was more than just a fellow player. The child had become their leader, their guide, their mentor. Xareth felt a growing realization. Humanity wasn't simply learning how to fight. They were learning how to unite, how to work as one, how to lead, and how to follow when necessary. This wasn't just a simulation. This was training for a future that was already upon them. The children moved as one. Aiden's command was clear, and the others executed the plan with incredible coordination. They split their forces, using a false retreat to lure the enemy into a trap. It was a beautiful execution, like watching a dance that required perfect timing and mutual trust. Every member of the group knew their role, and they carried it out flawlessly. When the simulation ended, the room was silent. The victory was theirs, but the lesson was far deeper than any simulated victory could provide. The children had learned how to fight together, how to lead, and how to make decisions that affected the whole of their team. Xareth watched them quietly, knowing that what they had just seen was only a glimpse of what was to come. If these children were the future of humanity, the galaxy would soon have a new power to reckon with, and the Admiral was beginning to realize that this was not a force they could afford to underestimate. As Kareth paced through the corridors of the human colony, the weight of the past days pressed heavily on their mind. The images of Aiden and the other children replayed over and over, young minds learning faster than the Admiral had ever thought possible. Each session, each battle, seemed to reveal another layer to the human potential. Sarith paused by a window, gazing out at the stars beyond. The universe, vast and untamed, had always been a playground for the powerful, a place where age-old civilizations fought for supremacy. But humanity, these upstart humans, were different. It wasn't just their adaptability or their quick learning. It was something more. It was a hunger, a relentless drive to improve, to rise above their limitations and carve a path through the stars. They had the tenacity to overcome any challenge, the ingenuity to adapt to any environment. They didn't just survive, they thrived. The Admiral thought back to the conversations they'd overheard from other alien commanders, dismissing humanity as a fleeting curiosity, a species that would eventually fade into irrelevance as the older powers of the galaxy reasserted control. They had all underestimated the humans, and Xareth, for all their years of experience, had done the same. But the galaxy was changing. Humans were learning faster than anyone had expected. And Aiden was the living proof. The child had a level of tactical foresight that could challenge the oldest, most powerful species in the galaxy. Aiden didn't just play a game. Aiden understood the fundamentals of command, of strategy, and unity. And if this child could do it, then surely every other human child would follow suit, growing in strength and leadership as they age. Xareth's mind wandered back to the simulation room once again. The last session had been different from the others. It hadn't been about victory. It had been about sacrifice. Aiden had led the group into a mock battle where their team had been outnumbered. The child had made the decision to send a portion of the group on a suicide mission to take down the enemy's flagship, even though it would cost them dearly. The Admiral had watched as the other children hesitated, unsure of the plan at first. But Aiden had stood firm, explaining that the mission had to be completed for the greater good of the team. The younger ones had followed, their trust in Aiden unwavering. And in the end, the mission had succeeded. The flagship was destroyed, and the enemy fleet was crippled. It wasn't just a victory, it was a lesson. Leadership was not just about winning. It was about making hard choices, about knowing when to sacrifice, when to put the greater good ahead of personal gain. And the child had taught them that lesson, leading by example. Xareth shuddered. This was no longer a simple game. This was the kind of leadership that could reshape the galaxy. Aiden was learning how to lead entire fleets, entire armies. And soon, the child would be in a position to do so for real. The Admiral knew that humans could never be allowed to gain such an edge. The galaxy could not afford to have them rise unchecked. Sarith made a decision. The time had come to take action. The Admiral walked toward the command center, their resolve firm. The humans needed to be contained. If they were allowed to continue on their current path, the balance of power would shift in ways no one could predict. Sarith's species had seen the rise and fall of empires before, and they understood the threat of a new rising power. Humanity had to be stopped. The decision had been made, but as Kareth stepped into the command center, a strange sense of doubt gnawed at them. They had spent countless hours studying human tactics, watching Aiden and the others. There was something about the children's camaraderie, their unshakable belief in each other, that made the Admiral hesitate. It wasn't the strategy they feared, it was the unity of purpose. The humans weren't just a threat because of their tactical brilliance. They were a threat because of their ability to work together, to lead, and to trust. Sarith had lived through many wars, had seen species rise and fall, each marked by their unique strengths. But humanity was different. They were a force unlike any the galaxy had seen before. And now, Sarith was standing at the edge of a decision that could either secure their species' dominance or ignite a conflict that could change the fabric of the galaxy itself. "Admiral," "We've completed the analysis," one of Tareth's officers said, pulling up a projection of the human colony systems. "They've been learning rapidly. Their command structure is becoming more sophisticated every day. Aiden's group is already implementing advanced strategies that rival the fleets of our older allies." Sareth nodded, their thoughts far away. The officer's report was precise, and the Admiral could see the implications. The humans were evolving at a rate that would leave even the most advanced civilizations scrambling to keep up. But they also knew that humanity wasn't the only species in the galaxy with something to lose. The balance of power had to be maintained. It had always been this way. Yet, as the data unfolded on the screen, Sareth couldn't shake the image of Aiden, the child who had once been just another face among many. But now, Aiden was a beacon, a symbol of everything humanity could become. And that frightened Sareth more than anything else. "What are you suggesting, Admiral?" another officer asked, breaking Sareth from their thoughts. Sareth took a deep breath and turned toward the officer. "We cannot allow them to continue unchecked. The simulations we've seen, their tactics, their leadership, their drive, are far too advanced. They're learning faster than any species we've encountered. The humans are building something bigger than we ever anticipated. If we don't intervene now, they will be able to challenge us all." The officer hesitated. "But the humans have only just begun to explore the galaxy. Surely, they need time to." "They are wasting no time," Sareth interrupted. "And neither can we. If we let them continue down this path, they will grow too powerful too quickly. And when that happens, we will no longer be able to control them. We will be at their mercy." Sareth's words hung in the air, cold and final. The decision had been made. The Admiral's mind had already begun to calculate the next steps. They would need to rally their allies, prepare for a move that would keep humanity contained. A decisive strike now, before the children had grown into commanders of entire fleets, could prevent a catastrophe. But as Sareth walked toward the command center's exit, the image of Aiden lingered in their mind. A child, so innocent and yet so dangerous. The Admiral couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this than simple strategy. There was something about humanity's unity, their determination, that hinted at a future no one, Sareth included, was truly prepared for. The galaxy was about to change, and Sareth had to decide whether they were going to be part of that change, or if they would fight it until the very end.